12:50ish. That would be
Wrap.
ideal. Quick
We can wrap
half hour guy.
then, or then earlier. I am good with anything.
Sounds good. All right. I will record as a backup if
Cool.
you give me permissions.
Yeah, one sec. Okay.
Cool. I am recording. Shall I kick it off, or would you like to?
You
All
kick.
right. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to your favorite Cubs podcast. I'm putting it out there. Wow, look at that bold claim. This is Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York and love the Cubs. Although we're both going to the Midwest tomorrow, but not to Chicago. Either way, the point is, I'm Adam Amawala. I'm here with your boy, Kevin McCaffrey. How we doing today, Kev?
I'm all right. I think you're probably likely right for the most part about it being people's favorite Cubs podcast, because I think we're the kind of podcast. Follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter, on Instagram, all the things. If you are listening to us, I think that probably means we are your favorite, because the other ones that might be your favorite, I think if you're listening to those a lot, you don't find us. You know what I mean? I think like we're the deeper cut, the more indie situation than the other ones you might prefer. So I think that's not too bold a claim.
It's true, and I hate to say it, I did have somewhat of a beef with the Compound this week. I don't think you listen to the Compound quite as much, but I have been listening. I just think it's cool to get the player's perspective during the season. But I gotta tell you, what's that thing called where like you have sensitive ears if people are chewing? There's like a term for it.
I don't know, but I absolutely have that. I am repulsed by it. I cannot take it.
Yeah, so they had Scott Efros on, which was cool because he's on the Yankees now and had some perspective about that. But also Steven Souza Jr. And he was snacking the whole time, and I wanted to die. That like open mouth chewing sort of thing where he's like smacking his lips while he's talking. Like you couldn't not eat almonds for 30 minutes.
Jesus Christ. It's just a level of obliviousness, I think. It's actively rude, I would say. Too. It's oblivious, and I see Steven Souza's teammates for the most part seem to really love him. If you've seen him on Twitter at all, he's an absolute lunatic. He's unhinged. He's a crazy person, and apparently, this checks out as something from what my experience with Steven Souza is. He doesn't know that he's a part of society. He doesn't know that a society exists, and so him being some disgusting chew into a mic guy makes all the sense in the world to me.
It does, and again, I love the Compound. I love Hap and Dakota Mekas and Zach Short. They're all great. But I will say Steven Souza has the vibe of like the jock guy who's dumb but thinks he's really funny and is still quoting movies from 20 years ago. Like he ended a serious question that Ian Happ asked him by saying, "I love lamp." So if that gives you a perspective of like where he's at comedically.
Yeah, and I think that gives you, in terms of how much his teammates do seem to like him, that I think that gives you a sense of where Major League Baseball players on average may be comedically and intellectually, possibly. But Souza also might actively love lamp. I think he might. Maybe he doesn't even know that was a movie quote. That might just have been him living his life, and he saw a lamp, and he wanted to tell you he loved it.
It could be. Last thing I'll say on this topic is I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where Larry gets called out for eating while apologizing, which I do agree is rude.
Absolutely.
But his belief is that you can snack and apologize, which I disagree with.
No, I completely disagree.
I'm usually with Larry, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's bullshit. You gotta focus for a minute. No, I feel the same way about like, at the flying at the height of COVID, when people would have their mask hanging off their ear the whole time while they just have to eat continuously for 2 hours. I always think, can you not plan, like a human body does not need to consume food every minute of every day. I know we're in America, and that is a thing that our country likes to do, is to never stop consuming and stuffing our disgusting tubes of humanity with other food. But you can take 2 hours off. I'll give you leeway for a half hour in the middle on an international flight or something. But
let me tell you something. I've decided that this is no longer a Cubs podcast, and we're just gonna talk about air travel. I recently had my first experience flying Allegiant Air. I don't know if you've heard of that. It is very much in the vein of like a Frontier or a Spirit, where it's intentionally bare bones. Everything's an upcharge, but you also like kind of know what you're signing up for. I think I flew to Cincinnati for like $80 and I just had a backpack and it was like mostly fine.
Nice.
But people sitting behind me, first of all, this was a 10 a.m. flight. The guy ordered a triple Jack and Coke. He was told, you can't do that. We don't do triples.
Yeah, we stopped at doubles. Yeah, we live in a society.
They gave him a double Jack and Coke. His lady had a double tequila soda, which, you know, there's a time and place. Generally, 10 a.m. on an Allegiant flight is not my time nor my place. But then they proceeded to order so many drinks and foods that it occurred to me that they could have just not flown Allegiant. If they had packed their own snacks, they could have flown first class, arguably.
Yeah, with the amount of money they ended up.
They spent $100 on overpriced snacks and drinks. I could not believe it.
It's more than you paid for the flight. It is. Yes, that's lunacy. And usually, as you know, I support drinking at 10 a.m. But that is
sure.
Yeah, that is. But you should be able to plan it better. And yeah, just go first class. Treat yourself. They give you the drinks before you take off on first class. So
that is true. What's the earliest drink you've ever had? And I'm not counting like you're still up from the previous.
Sure, definitely in the. I would for sure say definitely in the 7 a.m. hour. I've probably done it in the 6 a.m. hour, but it's been a while, you know.
Now, is this like a morning drink, like a Bloody Mary, or is it like I'm just having a vodka soda at 6 a.m.?
I've had a vodka soda in the 7 a.m. hour for sure. I do think flying is a different rule. So I've definitely, if I don't have anything else to do that day, I would have it that early, but for sure in like college and like, you know, on a tailgate day or something, I would wake up and hit it like that. Rarely these days. These days, I'm
that's fair.
Even fair. if I'm having a soccer hangout watching Premier League stuff, I'll have a rosé at 9 a.m. You know, possibly.
Ooh, all class all the way. Well, listen, we're 10 minutes into the podcast and we have really buried the lead because the Cubs are, against all odds, playing pretty good baseball. They've won now, is it 4 or 5 series in a row?
I think it's 5. I could be wrong about that, but as we're in the midst of the Cardinals series right now, which could go either way, I guess, right?
Yeah, they would have to win the last 2 to win 3 of 5, which is, you know, it's possible.
I mean, they have a winning record since the All-Star break, which is great.
Better than the Yankees.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Yankees are in a really desolate stretch here. And I went to the Yankees game in person that they had the Bodie-esque grand slam walk-off from down 3 against the Rays. And my Yankee fan friend I was there with got like genuinely emotional. Like he was like teary after it happened. And he was just yelling like, why am I like this and stuff. But hearing him talk about like the stress he had over a 9-game lead was the most Yankee fan shit I've ever heard in my life, but it has diluted a little bit now.
Yes, and to be fair, while that is an incredibly like peak Yankees fan being spoiled sort of mentality, I do remember, and I think you would agree with this, during that stretch in 2016 where the Cubs just seemed like they couldn't win a game, I was having those moments of doubt of like, oh, maybe this team isn't as dominant as I thought. I mean, I forget how many you went to, but I went to at least 2 or 3 of those games at Citi Field where the Cubs got swept in a 4-game series. It was like right around the 4th of July that year, right before the All-Star break, and they just, I don't know, they went like, what, 5-15 or something in a 20-game stretch? And they're, especially as Cubs fans, we were like, well, we were wrong again.
Here we were wrong again,
Ernie. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what I told him too, was that it's possible the Yankees could lose this, but if they do, it's a 1969 Cubs scenario, like squandering a 9-game lead from August. So it could happen. It would just be kind of legendary. And I think as Cubs fans, it had been more reasonable for us to have that kind of paranoia than to see how quickly the paranoia seeps into these Yankee fans. But yeah, we've been better than the Yankees since the All-Star break, and I mean, here's the thing. It's good to see the team playing better, and I'm sure you saw the quotes from Nico Horner, who's been getting a lot of plaudits from journalists and from other players lately too. Stroman was talking him up, how good it is to play in front of him, and how Stroman said Nico's underrated, but you have to see him every day to really appreciate him. But Nico was saying they are playing to win right now, so that like to basically convince the team upstairs and to convince free agents that this is a place that you can go and not suck, you know?
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's good. I don't want to overreact to a decent stretch of the year because the Red Sox were also the best team in baseball for June, you know, for a minute. So it's like every team typically goes through a good run and a bad run. That doesn't mean the Cubs are good now, but they have been playing well for a little while, and that's been cool.
Right, and I have to think that does matter. I don't know how much it impacts what the Ricketts think or what Jed Hoyer thinks, because I think we've learned to not really trust them about anything. But as far as it becoming a desirable place for free agents to go, yes, money is probably going to be more important than anything else. Like,
Yeah,
even
money
if
and
the Cubs
years.
lost 115 games, if they're offering Correa $50 million more than anyone else, he's probably still going to take it. But if the offers that a person's getting are comparable, and you're looking at joining a team that at least played pretty good ball towards the end, or won 75, 80 games rather than winning 50, I would imagine that would make a difference if winning is important to someone.
Yeah, I think it sort of opens you up to a different class of free agent a little bit. And obviously, Semien and Seager both signed with the Rangers last year, right? And the Rangers sucked, and they still suck. So, I mean, it's money and years far and away are the most important things when signing free agents and stuff. But I do think the team, if they close well, I think that does put the pressure on upstairs a little bit, if pressure can ever go upstairs. And yeah, I think like if you're someone who really values winning, who is the kind of free agent you would want here, but think of like John Lester signing, right? Like when he signed, I think it was important to John Lester to see a plan that this team was going to compete soon, even if not the first year. So I think that attracting that kind of free agent specifically, I think, yeah, it can have a little bit of a thing. It's a bit of a bummer to be like, we have to win a bunch of series in the second half to sort of prove base level competence as a team. That's a bit of a bummer, but I guess you might as well do it. And it's been fun watching Nico play very well to establish himself as Nico Hoerner is a good starter in the middle of the infield on a good winning baseball team. We didn't know that before this year.
Right. Well, and that's an interesting question, right? Because I think the most exciting pieces that the Cubs have right now on the pitching end and the hitting / defense end are certainly Nico and Justin Steele, who, I mean, Steele has been one of the best pitchers in baseball for a few months now.
Yeah.
How real do you think that is? Like, do you feel like Steele and Nico are overachieving what their careers will be, or do you think that we're seeing what could actually be sustainable here?
It's a great question.
Granted, Steele's not going to have a 1 ERA for the rest of his career. Everyone knows that. But
no, but he's, I think now he's under 3.3 on the year in his first year starting. As you can see, showing the class of where I typically stay as a comedian, this Motel 8 little message pad. But the first thing I've written on it is Real Steele, as I'm showing in the video feed. But I mean, I just don't know I don't think there's a reasonable argument to be made that Justin Steele isn't this good. He's 27, which is about when a lot of, pitchers are coming into their peaks, really. And he was delayed by injuries a little bit, but he was a premium high school prospect who dropped a little bit based on health concerns, I think, and pitched well in the minors when he was there. Obviously came up and was dominant as a reliever, and then took a small adjustment at the beginning of this year. This is a place our podcast was right. I think people were clamoring a bit like Steele should just go back to relieving, where he was very good. He had struggles early in the year as a starter a little bit.
And we did not agree with that about Steele or Keegan.
No, absolutely not, because you need to find starters for this team. I'm sick of hearing like, well, worst case scenario, they're a multi-inning reliever. We can't have 100 multi-inning relievers. Someone has to start, and Steele had that pedigree, and he's shown us, I mean, no one hits him hard. His fastball does something weird. We talked about this. The slider is a plus pitch. He's talked already about focusing on adding one more pitch to that arsenal. And I think the most important thing is, in a major league high by far in innings pitched that he has this year, he's getting stronger. He was still touching 94 on the fastball in the last game. This is a starter. This is I mean, he's pitched as, according to what stat you want to look at, by Fangraphs WAR, he's top 30, which technically would make you, there's 30 teams, that technically makes you a #1 starter by some measures. I think like it's not at all crazy to think that Justin Steele really is in the realm of where he slotted in the Cubs rotation to start the year, which was, as you remember, he was #2 in the rotation coming out of spring.
Right. And he's now joined a fairly small list of people who I think it's 3 or 4 starts in a row at Wrigley that he's had at least 9 strikeouts. Plus, he has that intangible known as dad strength. I mean, I tell you what, since Bo came into this world, Steele has given up very few runs.
That's really interesting. The post Bo ERA, Daddy Steele is really putting up numbers. Like the two.
I mean, that is the most porn star sounding thing I've ever
Daddy
heard.
Steele is incredible. It's just a good sports name. But since he became a dad, his numbers are off the fucking charts, and they're good anyway. So
right.
That's amazing.
And I'll tell you what, since the last podcast, and I think we kind of saw it was trending this way anyway, but we have officially gotten word that Kyle Hendricks is shut down for the year. He will not be pitching again until 2023. When he spoke about it, it seemed like he was kind of relieved more than anything, because your goals are different when you know, like, hey, this is what's going on. You're not going to pitch this year. We're not trying to work you towards getting back into action this year. And my goal for the Cubs and for Hendricks' place on the Cubs is, I would love next year, after the Cubs go and spend some money, for Hendricks to be the 2004 Maddox of the Cubs. Like, he's a guy who's got a proven track record. He's certainly, I would think, on the back end of his career. But if you get Hendricks healthy and get him in like the 4 or 5 spot on the rotation, behind the Steeles and Stromans of the world and whoever else you sign, I think that's a pretty good position for the rotation to be in.
I think that's a great comp with Maddox there, who was, Maddox was a little older at that time, but also was Greg Maddox. So I think I think about a healthy Kyle Hendricks after what we saw of him in 21, which was obviously a very down year for him, and then this year where he's been dealing with health things, and that happens as you get older. But before that, it's a hell of a track record. And if I absolutely love shutting him down here, and let's take a guy who just made every start forever, rest that up a little bit. And who knows, it's a shoulder thing, so it's like that can really mess you up permanently. But if not, and you get something resembling the Kyle Hendricks that we knew to slot in as I think I do think aiming at like the Hendricks as your 4 starter going into next year. I mean, if you add a number 1, whether that's Senga or Rodon or whatever, if you find a number 1 somehow, or trade from the depth in this farm system to go get a Shane Bieber or something, like if you put someone ahead of Stroman and then you have Steele in there at number 3-ish, I think you're talking about and Hendricks 4, that's getting close to what sounds like a winning rotation.
Right. And the kind of like meathead take on Hendricks has always been like, well, he doesn't throw hard, so his location has to be perfect. And that there is some validity to that, but I also think that the flip side of that coin is that you have the ability to age better when you're not someone who's so reliant on velocity. Like, we've already seen Aroldis Chapman get worse. He will continue to get worse, because when you're throwing 103, you can miss your spot. When you're throwing 98, you can't do that.
It's amazing Sorry, it's amazing how much you can not be good throwing 98,
well, anymore. This isn't 1993.
Right, exactly. So, I think that it's the rare news where Hendricks getting shut down for the year. I thought, good, this is good news. Let's focus. There's no reason to bring him back there. And then,
I have seen a weird segment of Cubs Twitter, as there always is, who's like, "Oh, we should have flipped him last year," which, like, I guess you can make that case now, given the injuries that he's had. But also, just from an emotional standpoint, imagine if they had also traded Hendricks on the trade deadline last year. It was already awful enough. I mean, come on.
Right. I mean, I think it would have been a bit of, well, I'm dead, you can't kill me more, so it would have in that sense, but that's not a good place to be. And in hindsight, you should always trade someone at their peak value, but that's not how the world works. And also, he's making what, like 15 million, which in the world of reliable starters, which I understand he hasn't been there this year, but a guy who has been reliable, that is a really good price to have a starter at. So I'm fine with that. And if he comes back healthy, that is such a huge boost to this rotation, because when he's been healthy, that is a number 1 or 2 starter. And you could say the same about Stroman and the same about Steele this year, and you should sign someone else who's that. So it would be a high ceiling for what that rotation could be.
Nothing would make me happier than seeing Hendricks at like age 36 finally get into an All-Star game.
It's one of the absurdities of All-Star stuff that guy has not been in an All-Star game. But that'll be something I'll be rooting for in the first half of next year. And then that leaves like the back of the rotation. You're starting to talk about depth guys and prospects, of which the Cubs have sort of an assortment right now. Adrian Sampson has had a very good a very good run here. I mean, he ran into some trouble yesterday in the last inning, but Sampson's a guy, I think if you have him as either a long man or in your like 6, 7, 8 starter conversation, okay. We just saw Javier Assad get called up, and he made his major league debut. He's a guy who's had a lot of strikeouts, very few walks, an ERA at 2.66. This year, he's 25. He made a huge jump up several levels to get to the majors this year, and he was a low-money international signing in 2015. Yeah. So that's awesome.
And worked through. I mean, he gave up no runs, worked through a lot of trouble, and was able to weasel his way out of it. Certainly, a long way to go to move up into the #1 Javier power rankings of favorite Cubs. But hey,
yes, he's got a way to go, but. Yeah, but that's a guy who's in the conversation now. Caleb Killian, who we saw come up, absolutely forget how to throw a strike for a while. Caleb Killian's numbers on the year, he's sitting with a 3.8 ERA in AAA. But the one thing I do want to point out that's encouraging about Killian's year, what he was before he got to the Cubs was an extreme command guy. Walked nobody. Had good stuff, like the fastball, the four seam up to 98, 99 at times. And he had decent stuff, but was not ever missing bats. He bizarrely was never missing bats. And this year, he has 107 strikeouts and 85 innings pitched. So clearly the Cubs were targeting something to change his game. And in that way, it has worked. Maybe it takes a little while to settle in, but he's also not a guy you should be writing off quite yet.
No. But I mean, is there a world where the Cubs organizationally would like knowingly try to make him have less command in the interest of missing more bats? Like, is that a calculation you would make?
No, I don't think ever want to take away command almost for anything, as good Kyle Hendricks shows us what how command is at least as important and probably more so than stuff. But I think it's just like, possibly changing the shape of a pitch, changing how, his plan of attack, and being willing to walk someone once in a while if it means striking more guys out. I think that could be a tough balance, but also I'm always wary of taking away, if a guy has a weird gift, if he has an outlier of a skill, I really hate fucking with that. And I really liked that Caleb Killian walked nobody. But if you can find some sort of balance, the strikeout numbers have been impressive there. So good news.
And also down on the farm, we did see Canario get called up to AAA. Now Brennan Davis is back from his injury. So do you think, I mean, I don't expect that we'll see either of them up with the Cubs this year. Do you think there's any shot of that?
I think probably not. For a number of reasons. Canario's on the also on the 40-man, so I think he's going to be a guy who's looked at pretty strongly in spring training and stuff. He's got 31 homers on the year, a plus arm, 20 steals. My hot take is Canario would be the guy who I think might be reaching. He could be a superstar with those talents and those numbers. He would be a guy I would look into possibly packaging in a deal for a top starter. Of the Cubs' many outfield prospects and stuff, he's the one I think is sort of as hot as you can possibly be this year. And it might mean you're trading a star, but if you're talking about like a Shane Bieber deal or something, that would be the one I would flag.
Because I think over 30 home runs, right, combined
31
through the minors.
30, which is great. I mean, this is an exciting player, and Cubs fans should be excited about him. But if I was to flag anyone, it seems like he struggled with higher velocity and things like that. So I'm just saying that, but I think it wouldn't be shocking to see him get a couple at bats at the end of the year, but also I think it's a thing where you have enough outfielders right now. I mean, I don't know why Rafael Ortega is really here anymore, but otherwise you have enough outfielders to give at bats to. You sort of might as well not bring him up yet.
Yeah, and to your point, if there is any chance that he might get packaged in a deal, you're not helping yourself. I mean, I guess there's a world where he comes up and he's Aristides Aquino, but like if he comes up and a logical thing happens where he goes 1 for 22 in his few games with the Cubs, you're not really helping yourself there.
I think that's exactly true too. And Aquino's like that's a pretty good comp for Canario too, or could be. I guess on the
hopefully not, but I guess I mean. Because Aquino, he came up and lit the world on fire, and now I think they mentioned when I was at the Reds games, he hit 14 home runs in his first month, and since that first month has hit 19 total.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my hot take is maybe Canario on a trade. And then Brennan Davis, speaking of outfielders who are kind of close to the majors, he is back and healthy. He's playing at South Bend now, or he will be playing at South Bend. And that's great to see, like, hopefully just see a healthy Brennan Davis going into the end of this year, because then we can get, this has been kind of a lost year for Brennan. Hopefully he's healthy, the back issues are fixed, and he can be, you know, if not opening with the team next year, in the conversation for a midseason call-up. So yeah, I mean, that's everything I've got as far as updates on the week. I don't know if there's and Pat Foley, Blackhawks legend, doing the radio yesterday for the Cardinals is really fun to hear, like, the hockey pace, the hockey pacing of, like, intense, fast-moving baseball coverage.
How does one even do that for baseball? Like, I can't even, like, picture what that would sound like.
Foley, absolute legend. He just brought it. I mean, it was a lot of energy for baseball. It was funny to hear.
He's retired now from commentating the Blackhawks, right?
Yeah, but he could go till for eternity. That guy's great. Yeah. So that's the only other notable thing.
How about them Chicago Sky, by the way?
Chicago Sky coming back and beating the Liberty, beating the New York Liberty. I love it. My mom's husband is the biggest Sky fan, and so I'm very excited for him. And they're defending that title.
The Liberty won. It's a best of 3. The Liberty won game 1, and then got a little cocky. And game 2, the Sky won by 38 points. Cut to the Cat Williams. You shouldn't have been talking shit.
Yes, you should tweet that GIF at, like, Candace Parker or something.
Yes,
that is perfect.
So yeah, best of luck to the Sky. And you got any other Cubs notes, baseball notes?
Nope, at Away Games Pod on Twitter and Instagram and all the things. And yeah, that's it. And we'll catch you next week, I guess.
Yeah. If you're in Minnesota, go see Kevin this weekend.
Thank you. Yeah, that's true. I'm in Minneapolis this weekend. If you're anywhere near there, Comedy Corner Underground, Friday, August 26th, Saturday, August 27th, 8 p.m. shows. Come see me.
Max Kepler's opening. Go see him.
Do it. We're hitting grounders.